I believe that the time is nigh when we have to intensify our political work to take on the PPP politically. They are not going to respond to conferences. When I became General Secretary in 1997, we began a process of working, etc. And there were many times when we were talking about discussing an inclusive governance. The PPP never budged. The only time they budged is after the 1997-98 protests, in which there was constitutional reform. And some mechanisms were put in the Constitution to help the process, including a procurement commission. They violated the law and never implemented them. The people only understand political pressure. And so, in my opinion, yes, we need to challenge them in court. Yes, we need to challenge them in parliament, but we have to prepare to challenge them in all other areas because they have no good intention. Their aim is domination. They intend to destroy and marginalize Afro-Guyanese. They intend to destroy and marginalize every Indo-Guyanese and indigenous person who support the APNUFs, including burning down the butcher shop. So, in my opinion, we now have to move to intensify the struggle in some other directions. That is my candid view on this.
Let me pin you down there, Aubrey. Do you think that this matter of trying to influence the leadership of the police force is the moment for that intensification that you're talking about? We're not hearing you. You're off. Mr. Operator, please keep the guests on so that they don't have to every time go to their thing. Yeah. Please keep them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have to do work among the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Defense Force to let them understand that they are being used against Guyana's best interests by the People's Progressive Party. Is it not interesting that every time a letter goes out for show reason why, it's Mark Phillips? Do you think that is by accident? He merely replaced Sam Hinds in that role. Wherever it is something of that nature, a Mark Phillips emerges. Now, I'm saying to you, we have got to intensify this struggle. We have to meet out to members of the Guyana Police Force and let them know that we are their friends and not their enemies. It is the first time in the history of this country, I know, you discharge people then investigate. What nonsense you telling me? When you charge Lowenfield and company, and now you are asking the courts to give you documents so you can make a case. It is absolutely berserk. It shows you the nature of the People's Progressive Party. And the cases that they have evidence for, as it is just alleged with Karimash, they have no interest in that.
Kidaki?
I'm saying, I want to make one last point.
Yes.
We have got to do work like we did in 1997 to say to the police and the Guyana Defense Force, you're being used against your country's interests, you're being used against your best interests, and that the people that are using you only interested in themselves and their families. If you look at their treatment of even their constituencies in many matters, you will see this is not about the people of Guyana. It is about a PPP cabal that wants to dominate, control, and have all the wealth at the disposal. Last thing, I have always challenged Jack Deo, Irfan Ali, and company to put their salary over the years against their wealth. And if it is in keeping with banking standards, then we'll accept that the wealth is decent. If it isn't, let it charge themselves.
Kidaki, do you think that this police this police situation here offers an opportunity for an intensification of the struggles as Aubrey has framed it?
Yes, quite frankly, I believe that the Poslow situation has offered the opposition a gift on a platter. And I'm hoping and praying every single day that they maximize the use of that gift. There's so many angles from which the opposition can come at the illegitimate government and the coercive arms of state in this situation. Let's start, for example, interference in the work of a constitutional body. Article 180 says that the president can be asked to leave office. It might be a testing process, but I think it is something that ought to be engaged in. We know for a fact that as part of the domination plan is to move their people into certain positions in the coercive arms of state. Charge Karambash for criminally as against departmental charges. If the DPP won't charge him, if the police won't charge him, file private criminal charges. Don't tell me the DPP will take it over null pros. Let them show their hands like that. There's so many things which the opposition can do to utilize this quote-unquote opening for intensifying the struggle that will perhaps set this society on the right path.
Aubrey Norton says we have to educate the people in the police force. Kidaki Amsterdam says move to the court, perhaps file private charges. Henry Jeffrey, is that going to, first of all, are those things feasible? Do you agree with it? And do you agree that this is perhaps the moment to move in the direction that the country needs to go?
I believe that any political party worth its salt must have long, medium, and short-term goals. When I spoke just now to the whole question of shared governance, I did say that the PPP was refusing it till the 70s, since independence. And once they had the majority, they thought that they had a right to rule because somehow they saw democracy as majority rule, which it is not. Democracy is not. Democracy is majority rule within a constitutional context, or else Trump couldn't win the presidency when he did it in the United States. So it's not. It must have, depending on its specific context, some medium and short-term goals. I stated from a constitutional point and a demographic standpoint where I believe the medium-term goal could be electorally. But you are confronted with a group of people that cannot run Guyana without dominating it. And therefore, you must also be organized to respond to that. You have to respond to that. So effectively, I am saying, yes, you got to sell a vision, a long-term vision. This is what we are going to, this is where I hope Guyana will do. Aubrey was trying to say, this is what we hope Guyana will come to, where we sit down at the table and make decisions about our lives together, and Exxon and everybody else, don't they running away with everything we got. We understand now in this, the PPP has shown since day one, they don't want that, but at the time they had 53%, but now they got 40 and they still don't want it. So they had got involved in manipulating elections to push back the natural process of the state. We see for one of the major struggles must be to have a clean list and a clean elections. And the party go, there's like a medium-term goal. Clean list, clean elections, and let's move it. Prevent people from doing these jiggery-poggery about elections. And certainly, if you are worth your salt of the party, you have to take on any person that is set towards dominance. And that got to come at various levels. When I said you have to have legally, I'm saying that they said there were nearly 200 ways of protesting non-violently. There are 200. The state, in their response, might force you to act violently, but there are over nearly 200 ways. But you have, particularly in a country such as ours, you have to be prepared. It is in Aubrey spoke to the 2000 constitutional reform. The woman's done at court, and the St. Lucia statement allows Ms. Jagdio to give up 2 years over a term or something. And that's where I start going on with more fire, because parties don't give that up easily. So effectively they were brought to the table because it was organized and willing to take you on. And therefore, any party, PPP, PNC, all of them, if you are faced with domination and that sort of a thing, you have to be able to say, I'm going to respond. I mean, that goes without saying. How you organize that response is the strategic problem, because there are various ways of organizing that response, and we have seen it in how people organize it around the world.
Thank you very much, Henry Jeffrey. We are past our time, but I can't end this program without going back to the party people here. Kidaki's WPA, Aubrey, your PNC. There seems to be consensus that something needs to be done. What you yourself, Aubrey, refer to as an intensification of the struggle. Your last words, I want you to address that frontally, because reading the comments, people seem to be agreeing with Henry Jeffrey and you and Kidaki that this offers any party worth its salt, according to Henry Jeffrey, an opportunity to up that. Volume, we're not getting any volume. Mr. Operator, please keep their audio on.
Yeah, are you hearing me now?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay. My response, it's not with the police.
You're very muffled.
All right, are you hearing me now?
I'm hearing you clearly now.
Well, all right. I'm saying, here you have a situation where, coming out of this election process, the chairman of the election commission apparently was in agreement right down until whoever got to her. But there is no attempt to charge her, which suggests the direction they're going. Now, I believe a combination of things created the conditions for protest against the treatment of the force in general and the attempt to dominate it. 2, the treatment of the Ghana Defense Force over the years and the attempt to dominate it. 3, the high cost of living that has emerged even though the PPP had a lot of platitudes. I think that would have contributed. The attempt domination of NDC, etc. The discrimination, political and ethnic. The pomposity and barefacedness of the PPP and the regime. I think all of those things have co-mixed to create conditions for this regime to be taken on. Because it should be evident to all that nothing is going to be done with just talk. All that we have achieved, including constitutional reform in this country, came as a result of protests. And the only thing the PPP understand is that. I agree with Jeffrey, there are many ways to protest, and those details have got to be worked out. But I also want you to understand that this is being done in the context of COVID, where they are using the laws selectively to ensure that you can't do certain things. So there are a lot of strategic things to be sorted out. But I close by saying, I think we have done a fairly good job of educating the Guyanese on what is happening. We need to move from educate to agitate. And then
we have to move from educate to agitate. That's, if I were preparing tomorrow morning's newspaper, that would be my headline. Lucky Amsterdam, do you agree with that?
Yes, I certainly agree with that. As a matter of fact, I want to toot my own horn and say I've been calling for agitation for moons now, several moons now. As they would say, since I was a boy. I'm happy that Aubrey and other elements of the opposition are now at this point. I think the time is opportune for agitation. We have had a long hiatus, and the time is now to agitate. We have all the elements coming together that should really encourage people to agitate. Aubrey himself highlighted some of them. And so it is now for those in leadership in the opposition to use their influence and let the agitation begin.
Let the agitation begin. Kidaki Amsterdam himself, an executive member of the Working People's Alliance. We've heard from the party people here tonight. They have gotten some support from those of us like Henry, who doesn't walk the halls of power, but recognize, and I quote him, any party that is worth its salt must engage and push back about on what is happening now. Gentlemen, thank you all very much. The audience was tonight. They were quite vocal. They seem to be energized by our concluding section. Want to thank you all for coming on, and you will certainly hear from me in the very near future as we move into another week. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there you have it, audience. We're always the first day, right? So, Mr. Aubrey Norton has said that it is time to move from education to agitation. Mr. Kidaki Amsterdam from the WPA says that agitation should be the order of the day. Henry Jeffrey, who doesn't belong to a political party, has said that any party that's worth its salt must push back against the domination. Yes, there is a long-term view that we have to have power sharing. Yes, there is a long-term view we've got to have constitutional reform. But the factors, high cost of living, ethnic discrimination against African Guyanese, interference in the police force, interference in GCOM, trying to criminalize people in state apparatuses that you do not necessarily agree with. I would add to that a foreign policy that compromises Guyana's sovereignty. I will also add a media that is so lopsided in its coverage that it amounts to a violation of the right to free speech. When you put all those factors together, I have no hesitation in supporting the call tonight for a movement from education to agitation. And I've said on this program, we educate, but we educate as a means towards agitation, and that agitation must be towards the end that is freedom. The freedom is not an abstraction. Freedom is something that people must feel. People must feel free. It must not be a cosmetic freedom, a theoretical freedom. Freedom must be a practical thing. So the movement from education to agitation has begun on this program tonight. I know lots of you in the audience have been waiting for those words to come from those who walk the halls of power, those who head the major opposition political party. And tonight, they've said it in the words of one of the leading members. I want to say that it's clear that no one is talking about violent uprising. Nobody talked about that tonight. What we talked about is the right to protest against a government that has overreached. And the immediate task is to put that government back in its place. To put that government back in its place. In fairness to the opposition, it has taken a lot of blows since August 2nd for acting in ways that are consistent with the Constitution, but I think they were right to do that. And they're right to continue doing that. And so to move the movement from education to agitation. Good night. Next week we are going to be spending some time on that question of moving to knock Lowenfield and Myers and Mingo off. I rather suspect that that movement is similar to the movement to control the police force. Henry Jeffrey made the connection between controlling the police force and controlling GCOM. Next week, we are going to expand on that.